since we're talking on that topic, so how does the risk management play a role for the ultra high net worth individuals, also the business strategies?
Yeah, I think everyone has an appetite. So it depends on how they made their money, if it's family money, if they're
Mhm.
self-made. And then I think some of the smartest ones are like, multifamily, for example, 72% of all, whatever, stats are always made up, but approximately 72% of
Right.
all family offices have exposure to multifamily. Obviously, it's if they made they sold toilet paper and it became like a 300 million exit or $500 million exit, let's buy,
Mhm.
50 million of multifamily.
Mhm.
We know it's going to 2x over 5 years and 3x over 10, whatever it is.
This is the Real Estate Vibe Show, and I'm your host, Vinki Loomba. And today I have a very special guest with me, my good friend, Jonathan Tuttle. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
So, a little bit about Jonathan. Jonathan is a highly accomplished individual with a wealth of experience and expertise in the world of real estate investment, entrepreneurship, and digital marketing. As a fund manager at Midwest Park Capital and the host of Accredited Investor Podcast, Jonathan has dedicated his career to helping everyday accredited investors leverage, grow, and protect their assets using little known ultra high net worth business strategies. And we're going to be talking about that today. So with the successful track record, Jonathan will bring a unique perspective and a valuable insight to our conversation today. I'm really, really thrilled to have you with me today, Jonathan. Welcome again.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So today our topic of discussion is wealth amplified, ultra high net worth strategies, and mobile home parks. So we're going to talking about two things today. So Jonathan, please briefly share with me, how did you become who you are today?
Yeah, I think I always tell the story. I just grew up in an entrepreneur family. My dad was an entrepreneur, real estate developer, contractor. Had 3 real estate offices when I was a kid, built 80 some custom homes from the 80s to the mid 90s to almost early 2000s when we stopped. And then eventually got into the mobile home park space. So I kind of seen all that whole realm. And then I was just always was just like a kind of a hustler as a kid. I would do, instead of, sitting at home wanting to get something, I would go out and get it. Because I see kids nowadays where they just think people are going to pay for it and people hand it to you. I would go door knocking, selling cards. Back in the day, they had magazines. You could just sell cards door to door. So I'd go to every single house in like the entire city, or not cities, but suburbs, anything to do with like make money, shovel driveways, all that stuff. So I always just been passionate about just, creating your own destiny, basically.
So doing all that gave you the skill set to connect with others, right? That's why you have a huge network now.
I think that was initially it. And then I did BB. I don't know if it was a women's clothing back in the early 2000s. I ended up being the #1 seller in the country. It's out of California, actually, like LA and San Francisco. And at the time, I had like 300 some stores. The owner became a billionaire, but I would have like 5,000 to 7,000 women walk through the store. And so I'd have to talk to like that many people per day. And I just got so familiar with talking that really got my confidence up after the initial foundation and that. And then just always being social, going out and doing a lot of networking events, charity events, things of that nature.
Yeah, isn't it cool? Subconsciously you're learning so many skills without knowing, you did that when you're working at the BB stores, working with all these women, and kind of, fine tune your networking skills. So tell me about this huge network that you have created for yourself.
I mean, I just think it's coming down to, back then I used to be a lot more, I used to do a lot of events. So I did 7 different charity boards. So when I had my dog who just recently passed away, actually it's been 7 months now at this point, but recent enough for me. I used to do homeless dog events in Chicago and River North, and I would get special 1-day permits, and it'd be a few hundred people would show up. They'd bring their dogs. We'd have like 5 to 7 DJs, MC talking. We'd have raffles. We have like local top businesses. We had photo booths, giveaways, things of that nature. So doing events like that, it always got a lot of publicity, and just being just really generous with like doing free events like that. I did a Chef's Hall of Fame for Chicago for 5 years, which is a scholarship to underprivileged kids. And then we also, though Chicago is one of the bigger culinary cities in the country. You got New York, you got wine country, you got New Orleans, are some of the best, food cities in the countries or destinations in this country. And so we'd have like really big once a year event with all the celebrity chefs. Chicago has a lot of Michelin star restaurants. So always just kind of be in the forefront of being at different events and just being really just out there and starting social early. I mean, back in 2010, 11, I guess that was late, but it was still early before the boom, like, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And that's kind of just slowly built that up over time.
So, I mean, with all this experience, if you have to just combine all the experience and pick one thing out of it, what would that be? What skill that will be that you have learned over the years?
I think that's a good question. I think probably just listen to other people, but then also at the same time listen what is their motive and then see what their actions are. I think over time, because you meet a lot of people, this kind of goes hand in hand with it, I guess. You meet a lot of people, but then how many of those people actually end up being like relationships where you become really close? And I have, a handful on it becoming really close, but there's a lot of people that say hi to you, but then you never, you don't keep in touch, or things never, evolve into like a business deal or anything like that. So I think a lot of it just comes down to like just listening, see what they do, see what their behaviors are.
Interesting. And how do you leave a lasting impression on them? Because you say some stay in touch and some you build that trust relationship too over the course of time. So anything special you were doing? Because looking at your huge network, I'm really interested in that, because a lot of people can learn, from you or brush on their skill set. Mhm.
I think just being really genuine, and just being really authentic and genuine and having good intentions. And it comes down to even like people behavioral skill set. So like it's called the dark triad. If people are
Mhm.
familiar, you can Google it. It's called the dark triad test. So like it's a test that shows like the three worst behavioral traits of people. It's psychopathy, Machiavellism, and psychopathy. Did I say that right? Yeah. I think
Mhm.
Machiavellism, psychopathy, and narcissism. That's it. Sorry. But then so people that score really high in that are probably not be people you want to associate with. And I used to study, my dad was a psychologist as well. So I used to study a lot of psychology, and it's a skill set. It's still hard to read people, but like reading people, but you can, people that kind of command the room, you can kind of see people, what they're doing, but is it also for show? Is it also, they have like a good intention at the same time? So reading people, seeing how they follow through, it kind of all ties in together. I just always try to put out the effort and the energy and just be authentic. And again, I even had a post about this today. And like, even when you reach out to people, it's just like on LinkedIn, how many LinkedIn messages you get? I probably get 80 a month, and like 76 of them when it's like automated bot. And they use the software. It's like, hey, they didn't read your bio. Or sometimes they'll use it, they'll click on it to act like they did. And then they'll send you something like you're not even adding value first. Like all the stuff I've done, like a lot of the business deals I've got in relationship and the offers and business offers I've got, it's always like long term. I plant the seed with not really an intention of that, but build trust, build rapport, add a value first, and then later on. I see even like in my Facebook groups, for example, people like just automatically pitch something right away. Well, you haven't really, like in bigger deals or the best deals or the thing that's
Mhm.
worthwhile, it's not going to be immediate. Anything worthwhile is not going to be immediate.
Mhm.
So putting that foundation and not have the expectation, just put it out there and just go up to, like when I go to conferences, events, I just take a ton of coffee and they're the first, walk around. I remember we're like kind of hustling around, getting everyone's contact information, get them into your ecosystem and see where you could add value. Like I say, hey, oh, you do this? Oh, I know somebody does this. Let me introduce you. And then you just became the person to introduce them. You don't even have to do anything else after that. You're the one that they always talk, and if something evolves and they become business partners. Hey, how did you guys meet? Well, Jonathan introduced us.
Mhm.
So just adding value like that instead of just automatically. I also did a post today. Some people, I had 3 people ask for like coffee meetings. I'm like, who does that anymore? Like,
Mhm.
hey, it's 15 minutes. 15 minutes of my time, and anybody's time is a lot. We're only on this planet a finite amount of time, even
Mhm.
with biohacking. If we lived 150, 200 years, to new technology. But historically, we're in the mid 80s, late 70s, mid 80s. And you want me to go 15 minutes without even offering any value or valid reason why, and that's not even including the commute. So I just wasted 30 minutes to an hour to hopefully add value, and it's always about them usually. So always put something out there, give a reason why, add value, think of ways to do. Here's one, for example. You want to hear a crazy story?
Yeah, of course.
This one's kind of crazy. So what should I say? Because I know we're in the same circle, but I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
say it? Okay. So we just had a meeting with the government of Saudi Arabia on Sunday, 2 days ago, with the head of Ministry of Investments and the head of gaming,
Mhm.
which I've never thought it would ever happen. I tell people this is
Mhm.
crazy, but the reason I did is because the Forbes Middle East, listens to my accredited investor podcast. They reached out to offer, I think it's called, I always pronounce this wrong because I haven't been there. Rida, the
Right.
capital. right? That's the capital of Saudi Arabia. Well, they just had a Women in Power summit like 3 months ago, but this is like when they invited me. I went out to the one I met you in the LA family office event because I was negotiating my sale with Richard for my podcast or partial acquire. And at the last day at the event, I'm sitting at the table. There's this girl, she was like texting Elon literally. She was a VC. The guy next to me has like, it was a family office. He's building like a luxury resort in Panama. And I was just like, oh, just in Panama. I'm like literally wearing a Panama. I was like, in Panama for 5 weeks, or actually 6 weeks. And so he's like, oh, I was in the other part of Panama. And they got this other guy quiet at the end of the table. And we're all talking at the table, who is the smartest people you've ever met? And I was like, oh, Robert Everett Grant, which I was talking about before the show here. Robert Everett Grant was on my podcast, episode 6 or 7. He was a former CEO of multiple, including like Botox, some of the biggest healthcare companies, cosmetic companies in the world. President CEO, did multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. Now he has 15 companies where he's CEO, 15. Has a TV show where he travels the world. He looks at ancient history and puts it into algorithms, and he puts it into how it correlates to mathematics. Just really next level. He speaks like 7 languages. Like just everything is like just top to top tier. And the girls, the one lady who was a VC is like, no. And like, I was like, no, this guy is. And I just kept naming things off why he was the smartest guy I've ever met. And I meet a lot, a decent amount from conferences. This quiet guy at the end of the table ends up being good friends with him. And so he's like, come over here. And it was Kam Hosan from Rizvani Supercars in Everest, who was, in our circle here. So he's like, oh yeah, here's like Chris Brown, here's Jamie Foxx. And I was like, oh, I know those cars. He's like, that's your cars? He's like, yeah, I was co-founder of it. And anyway, so long story short, we had a call, we were talking, we just built rapport because I added value because I knew his friend. I had his friend's podcast, which I met at another conference, and we just kind of all tied in. It was weird. And then long story short, I told him, I was like, oh, let me tell you about I told him about the Middle Eastern, the Forbes Middle East Summit for Women's, because he still had a new women's startup. His founders are all women.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, hey, let me introduce you to them. He's like, he told me to like basically, hey, just reach out to them. Like, well, they kind of cold outreach me, but they listen to my podcast. So I cold outreached them, introduced him, and then they're like, oh no, he's still a little bit too late because we have to get, approval from the Saudi government, this and that. So then the next day comes like, oh, by the way, I was just speaking to His Excellence Khalid Al Falahi, who is the former 8-year, which he didn't say the former 8-year, I know, just give a context for the listeners, former 8-year CEO of Armco. Mm-hmm. The first trillion company in the world. It's the most profitable company. It's more profitable than Apple, the top 3 below them combined. I think they made 216 billion profit last year.
So anyway, it's like power of networking, like one leads to many connections,
And then I'm the one that connected everyone to get him to speak in his own country. So he's like, oh, by the way, Tom introduced His Excellence Khalid. Jonathan just talked about Forbes Middle East having the speaking, and I combined them all, and he was going to potentially fit his schedule in his own country to speak at the number 2 most popular person. He's the head of all ministry investments of all Saudi Arabia. So it's like crazy. And then I got the introduction to pitch we also have a video game wallet for blockchain. So
wow,
crazy how networking works like that.
Yeah, I think that's great, because the thing is, when you're adding value to others and then people value you, and that way you are opening up many more doors for yourself. So since you are vibrating at the higher vibrations, that's what I'm going to say right now, because you're mingling with this high net worth individuals. And I read in your bio as well that you talk about the high net worth, ultra high net worth business strategies. So I wanted to ask you, can you explain what is ultra high net worth business strategies?
We can't quantify it in one thing. It's a lot of strategic things. So for example, if you're in tech, I do a lot of digital and business consulting. It's called my revenue sense, my consulting. I take a couple clients a year. And for example, like I have a friend who's doing a new startup for a drink, which we're potentially negotiating with me being an advisor. It's like a kava drink called Wowie Pop. It's pretty cool. So people don't drink. But I was telling them, well, have you guys set up for Section 1202? They're like, what's Section 1202? Well, most people don't know Section 1202. It's the small qualified business stock option. So if you do a startup, you hold it for 5 years, the first 10 million, you pay 0 taxes. A lot of people don't know that. And if it's less than 10 years, you do Form 83B elections. A lot of people don't know that. So Form 83B elections basically allows you to pay the IRS basically you just say, I got this much equity in this new startup or this new company, or I acquire 3 HVACs, and you about to acquire it. You basically pay a portion of the taxes at a really, really ridiculously low amount ahead of time. And then as it grows, you pay the IRS, and then they basically want to get revenue off the business later on. But it's a way to really get your taxes. And then the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion Act, that's not really for high income earners. It's more for like digital nomads and people trying to stay outside the US. The first 120,000 per year is non-taxed. It goes up 8,000 every year for inflation. But you could pair that with strategies with offshore stuff. So like we have a formation in the Cayman Islands. We're looking at Dubai. I've been talking to investors, and I've been seeing crazy stuff, like having business formation in Singapore, have your head of banking in Switzerland. And then there's some crazy stuff you could do with it, like just having different formations, go where you're treated best, nomad capitalist kind of thing. But also just like leveraging, going back to what we both do, is real estate as well. So like easiest and most tried and true way, for example, multifamily, get the 27.5 depreciation. Mobile home parks is one different differentiator most people don't know, and I've posted ads before and people don't really understand this, but the land improvements is 15-year depreciation for mobile home parks. So when you acquire a park, you write off like 75 to 80% of the park initially, sometimes as low as 65. And then any homes the park owned is considered kind of like a multifamily 27.5. And obviously traditional commercial real estate's 39 years. And that's where you could get a really nice chunk of change. Obviously you could do cash out refis, there's different strategies in the real estate components too, but a lot of it, and then also comes down to legal structure. So like what states you're in, because like obviously a lot of people do Delaware. Delaware is, good for privacy. People do Wyoming, they do Delaware, they do Nevada. Delaware is for C Corps, pretty common. But as eventually you start getting more, you probably want to have some stuff. Depending on your business, and if it's e-com or if it's a traditional business, you might want to have something in the Caribbean. So a lot of people have a formation, you have layers of protection too. So if you're married, you want to have layers of protection. You have your South Dakota trust, and then you have your South Dakota trust, maybe also managed by somewhere in the Caribbean. So like Nevis, for example. And then a lot of those countries, if you have like a real estate there, they'll give you free citizenship for your whole family for like really cheap. Some of those Caribbean countries, they're UK based usually, like 150, average 200,000. So it's just having multiple layers, protection, tax benefits, and then structures to help you grow in your business. And then also because as you get more successful, you're more open to liability, more people come after you, easy targets. So if you can protect your assets and be smart about it, that's key.
Yeah. Yep. So let's talk about that since we're talking on that topic, So how does the risk management play a role for the ultra high net worth individuals, also the business strategies?
Yeah, I think everyone has an appetite. So it depends on how they made their money, if it's family money, if they're self-made. And then I think some of the smartest ones are like, multifamily, for example, 72% of all, whatever, stats are always made up, but approximately 72% of all family offices have exposure to multifamily. Obviously it's, if they made they sold toilet paper and it became like a 300 million exit or $500 million exit, let's buy, 50 million of multifamily. We know it's going to 2x over 5 years and 3x over 10, whatever it is, plus the tax 27.5 depreciation. It's a stable place to put capital, and it's better than putting the banks. But I think just having exposure, what I see is some people, if it's VCs, the VCs are going to be more, they want more of the home runs. So you'll see more of a kind of like 9 out of 10 will fail, but they have one strategic play where they know they could follow it from the angel, pre-seed, seed, series, and A, B, and C. They know that if 1 out of 10 hits, they could lose 9 out of 10 times. That one home run's 100x. So they like that, and they can use the section 1202, which I just mentioned. But having a little bit of exposure, like I think having like traditional commercial real estate, multifamily, mobile home parks are great. Obviously, we know self-storage and parking lots do really well as well. We're industrial right now too with the e-com movement, but having exposure to that, I know a lot of people too also like to roll up. If you're a smaller operator, roll up businesses right now. Traditional service-based businesses are a trend before private equity acquires it. So if you're like a small business owner and you have, Richard talks about this with dental and stuff like that in the family office club, but I have another group called a website called Business Cash Out, where we have SPVs, special purpose vehicles. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but basically a special purpose vehicle or special purpose entity, SPE, is basically a glorified LLC where you can acquire assets. You could also raise capital in it, like a private placement memorandum, like for real estate, but for businesses. But what you could do, you could use a couple of them. You acquire a business, like say a local plumbing or HVAC, they do really well because they're without even really any marketing. The big players will do the TV commercials and the mailers and the billboards, maybe some digital marketing. The smaller mom and pop that does $1.5, $2 million a year and probably does 400,000 EBITDA, 500. It's a great business for them, and they get guaranteed because plumbing always goes out and you can't replace it with robots at this point and foreseeable future. And so you could acquire them using a special purpose vehicle. You could put all the good assets in one special purpose vehicle and the employees, you're legally supposed to put the employees, and you could put all the bad debt and the bad liabilities in another SPV, and you could legally walk away. So what a story of this would be Enron back in the early 2000s. The people older, Enron used this when they were one of the most valuable company in the world at the time, and everyone walked away. They put all the profits and the good stuff and the assets, like IP and SPV in one area, and all the bad debt and risk in another SPV, going back to your risk, and you can walk away. And you can also raise capital in SPVs. So it's it's a sophisticated strategy for like ultra high net worth to acquire businesses and also raise capital and also mitigate risk.
So what I'm hearing is, in the ultra high net worth strategies is like a lot of diversification. And why not, right? All these ultra high net worth individuals, they have tons of money, they need to diversify. But isn't that like similar to wealth management? What is the distinction between the two, the wealth management and the ultra high net worth strategies?
Well, I think the wealth management depends on the ultra high worth is defined like 30 million above. Obviously inflation changed a lot of stuff, but credit investors, 200K a year, 300K if married, and $1 million net worth, not including a single family house. That was actually, I think, 1980 when they came out with it, which with inflation would be like 2.5x. So it'd be basically 400 or 500 a year. I don't know exactly what year it was, but I've heard it was like late 70s, early 80s. So they've been changing stipulations because they just want sophisticated investors. Obviously, qualified investors 2 million, 2.2 million, or 2.1, and then qualified purchasers 5 million above in investable assets. Usually people that manage money, they obviously have fees and stuff like that, just like a fund manager and stuff like that, or even a family office. And it just comes down to who you core trust and what your objectives are. And I think when you obviously, as you get to a certain 30 million above, you go to somebody like Richard Wilson from the Family Office Club, where they build you a whole family office, which if people aren't familiar with, that is basically how a normal person would have an accountant that has 100 clients. Their lawyer works with 100 or their lawyer has 100 clients. Well, at a family office, you have enough assets or enough revenue, or you just want to have one person you hire full-time that's your accountant, or one person's a lawyer. You have a whole team of people that just only work for you only. Or sometimes, depending on if you have enough assets, usually that's more than 100 million plus. If it's usually like 30 to 50 million, it's called a multifamily office. You partner up that team to mitigate that lawyer, instead of working for the 100 million family, work with 2 or 3 families. And that's called a multifamily office. So there's different tiers to it. But I mean, the easiest way, if you're just like a doctor, lawyer, you're a business owner, is invest with like one of our funds. Like, it's an easy way to get somebody that knows what they're doing. They could provide you all the resources. You have to go source the deal. They have the system, the process, the team, they have everything set up. You just sit back, and you don't have to. A fund manager could do all that for you. A wealth manager is going to just usually do the traditional stuff, and then they collect fees, and they're usually just very minuscule, and they're not, it's usually wealth managers catered to somebody like barely accredited investors. So I'd say usually fund managers, and if you're a little more risk averse or less enjoy risk, maybe do some angel investing and some different startups you like, and kind of you have the philosophy of like a VC, because a VC doesn't expect that every time they put money in a deal. It's just like a baseball player. Baseball players only hit 250 on average. 270 is like really good. So 8 times out of 10, you're not even getting a base hit. So that's kind of like the VC mentality for tech. But that one time they get a home run out of 15 bats, it more than covers all the losses, and it gets them like a 50x return, whatever it is. So
that's true. I think it all depends upon the risk appetite too, doing this kind of deals.
And how old you are too.
Exactly.
If you're younger, you can have time to make up, and if you're older, you need the retirement, and you have bills, and it depends on because you can make up money with length, because you have compound interest, and you could have different economies could come back. But if you're in an older age, you don't know how many more, what cycles you're in, what next recession. Like if we go in a recession next year or two, well, it's gonna be hard to make up.
That's
if you
true.
have 3 years to make up money.
That's true. I mean, that's what I'll call is all planning, but you never know, right?
That's
planning, but life is very unpredictable anyways. But thanks for looping in family office. I was going to ask you about family office, what the concept is about family office. But here I wanted to ask you a question about the common mistakes or challenges people face when they're implementing this ultra high net worth strategies.
Yeah, I think, well, just getting the right info. I think I always make fun of people on TikTok. I mean, there's some good people, but there's a lot of big influencers that say like the most ridiculous stuff. And like Twitter is cool because Twitter will actually have like the VCs and like have people that literally make fun of like, here's what's happening on TikTok for financial
Right.
advice. And it's like, I've literally seen people that have big followings give like completely, like almost basically illegal advice.
Oh my God.
But it trends because it's not like, it's
Mhm.
like this weird like litmus test. Like I just say the dumbest stuff, like these people will say the dumbest stuff and it goes viral. And
Uh-huh.
like I get his name. He just had $100 million exit, Alex Becker. And he talks about he's a big on biohacking and anti-aging, stuff like that. And like usually that's one of the trends, like the guy Brian Johnson that had the $800 million exit for not PayPal, but Braintree. And so they do that stuff, but those guys are really adamant about giving real good information. There's also a lot of people that just give information that sounds good for trendy, and people don't know the difference of who to get the information from. And then Alex Becker the other day mentioned he's like the most successful people, the biggest. You're not, yeah, you might see Zuckerberg first once in a while, but he's not giving business tips. Yeah, you might see Elon. Elon doesn't, once in a while have like a really in-depth comment because he owns Twitter now, but he's not saying, here's my business advice for the week. You know, you can emulate what they do, but there's a different scale and they have different funding and they have a different monopolies. But like he's like Alex Becker said, like literally name any 9-figure entrepreneur that's on social media posting business tips or is actually like has more than 10,000 followers. Like he's like even the founder of Shopify, Tobias, has like 13,000 followers, a multi-billionaire, and everyone uses Shopify for e-commerce. It's
Mhm.
brilliant. You know, he built a software from like his girlfriend's parents' basement or something.
Yeah, but isn't you think it's like a trending kind of thing, or is like what are the emerging trends or new developments in this space in the ultra high net worth business strategies?
I think just finding like some people like the trend right now is definitely I think at least that's I'm passionate about too is the biohacking, the health movement. I think you're seeing a lot more of that. I just had a guy on like Clay Speakman who was on a couple of episodes of my Credit Investor podcast. His goal is to live to 180. Alex Becker is like he wants to live to 200. Brian Johnson. We're not there yet, but the technology there right now, the goal is to stay without aging at a normal 1 to 1 year. It's the age with DUNEDIN test. It kind of looks at they do a holistic way from your organs, your vitals. And they see how fast you're aging comparatively to your age group. Obviously, we know stuff like there's different tests now. We're getting to the point where your telomere length is one of your biggest indicators of how long you live, and the hallmarks of aging basically. And so the whole point now is to not live, age at like 1 to 1 year. It's age to like less than a year. So like to basically, if you're 35, next 5 years, you're not biologically 40, you're maybe 37. And until the time that this technology keeps evolving, because now we have seen how much advance in AI and robotics and things like that. But at the same time, healthcare was really evolving. Just like the main thing is your liver, your kidneys, your organs, and your telomere lengths and the oxidation stretch from your mitochondria and the DNA methylation, stuff like that. So I'm just kind of learning that stuff. I think that's a big trend because if you have one thing, then what's the most important thing in life? Well, the one thing you can't get more of. You could always make more money. You could also be a billionaire, but you can't get time.
That's true. I agree on that 100%. So I'm going to shift gears here. So since you're passionate about mobile home parks, you touched on it a little bit earlier. So let's talk about the
Um,
mobile home parks now. So what are some of the key factors that you consider when you're trying to acquire a mobile home park? So if you can take like 1 minute, I know we are short on time a little bit, take 1 minute and just kind of walk us through from conception to completion, what you look for, what kind of market, or what factors are more important to you when you're looking for any deal in the mobile home park.
I'll condense it because there'd be a lot of stuff I'll leave out. I also have a mobile home wealth academy or teach people how to get their first park and how to flip mobile homes. But basically, I mean, it comes down to there's about 43,000 in change parks. Percentage every year torn down for higher and better use. Like in Florida, they're like on water, like they're retirement communities basically, and then they get torn down for assisted living centers and hotel resorts, stuff like that. But basically, there's also it's a 5-star system. So there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 star is kind of like 8 Mile, the movie with Eminem back in the day, or a Cops TV. They would always show like the worst case mobile home parks. There's definitely some of those. Those are rundown, like that's the trailer park. But there's also 5-star resort ones where they have waterfront properties, seniors, amenities, like everything. Basically it comes down to basically what your objectives are. I mean, do you want something that's more turnkey or do you want to turn on park? The hard part with turn on park is you're gonna have to infill the mobile homes. And right now there's a a few months back order on mobile homes. There's about 100,000 mobile homes produced per year, 50,000%, like just say approximately 50,000 of those are produced by Clayton Homes. Clayton Homes is owned by Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett's also the biggest maker of mobile homes. Clayton, and he's also the biggest financer with this 21st mortgage. And so you'd have to basically build in, you find like less than 70% occupied, and you can't find used homes, which could be hard because like mobile home wealth, if you're a park owner, you usually just want to put $5,000 or $10,000, $20,000 to repair it, and spend $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 to bring a new home. And so depending on the park, if it's like a mid-tier, it's like a $2 to $5 million park or $2 to $8 million park, it's better just use them used homes. And so there's so many different things. And then also the water system, city water, city sewer, everyone knows that. I saw TikTok, going back to TikTok, somebody said, hey, don't be afraid to buy a mobile home park unseen. Like, no, you could look at like Google Maps or Google Earth. You could take somebody drive through with a video. You could talk to the owner, but that doesn't mean anything if underground you have leaks, the ground, like the water, the sewage is leaking. You have to put in $500,000 in new piping.
Yeah.
So, and then the zoning approval, and make sure, because a lot of parks from the 1890s called the grandfathered law, and he was actually like more of a racial, US has some crazy racial history, but it was a grandfather law for basically voting rights, and that was from 1890s. But for real estate, it was basically property could be legally but non-conforming, and so making sure that the park continues to operate as a park. A lot of cities, the cool thing about it is, or towns, they'll let you do any zoning because they don't want the park because they get the least taxation and the stigma unless it's like a nicer park. And on top of that, because people don't realize this, the tenants, which is really valuable for affordable housing component, is the average tenant only spends, like if it's an older home, like 70s or 80s, like we're at HUD's 1976 when the government got involved and said everything has to be a standard from 1976. But a 70s, if it's like tertiary secondary market, 2 hours outside of the city, they're paying $10 a month for taxes. $10. So plus the lot rent, let's say the average lot rent's $400, utilities are $550. But the $10 covers the same school system as somebody paying $500 a month for a $200,000 house across the street. Their all-in cost is more than your real estate taxes that you pay. They have the same school, same fire, same police, everything the same. And there's a National Association Realtor and a couple other articles that mobile homes actually appreciate more than homes because there's a shortage of affordable housing. So they're making more on the appreciation of the house than a used home. So
that's true. Are you syndicating these deals?
I need to be. That's what I'm building. I got a pretty big list of buyers and big people coming in right now. I've been looking for some right partners to partner up with. I put an offer on a deal. The last deal we did, we ended up getting beat by the second biggest operator, and which we knew was coming into place, but it was off market. I have a lot of access to the deal flow because I was former head of VL Realty, which is the last 3 years in a row, the number one brokerage. They've done, crazy. I don't know, they did like $3 billion last year. It's been explosive. I wish I was still doing it a little bit, but that was I was the president of Midwest for them, and all my other friends are like top brokers in the entire country, and they've been in the space. So I get access to deal flow that they'll give me deals that most people wouldn't see because I've been in the space 15 years. So, but the one deal that we lost out to the biggest buyer because they basically land grab. They basically outbid us because they get capital. They had $15 billion in assets, and like they basically bought the park at like with no room to make money for the first 2 years, but they just want to acquire it, throw it, roll up in their portfolio, and they'll end up selling it to a sovereign wealth fund for 20 billion, whatever it is.
Wow, interesting. So your business strategy is mostly like 3 to 5 years. What is the
I think that's going forward. It's going to be because last time I did the whole keep it minimums 8 to 10 because that's kind of the standard for mobile parks. So they're just like easy cash flow, and there's a finite amount of it. It's really hard to get new zoning approval. And if you're doing new ones, you're actually building a subdivision. So you're a subdivision developer, not really a mobile home park owner. And so, but most of the investors I've been talking to, like they rather get the 5 year, get that cash back. So
awesome. That's good. I'm sorry, we're out of time. I have tons more questions. Maybe we need to reconvene on mobile home parks. So share one golden nugget with my audience.
In what regard? Like just a golden nugget in business?
Anything.
I think it always goes back to just be honestly curiosity and endless learning. I think that's the one trait that a lot of people, you just keep learning and learning and growing and keep questioning and thinking. It's going to add up over time. A lot of people, and just make sure you're getting it from the right sources too. Going back to TikTok stuff. I mean, there's definitely some good people on there, but get it from the right sources, and then, think of how this could, impact your business and where you could see yourself in the future. But always be curiosity and always be an experimenter, because that's the best entrepreneurs are always testing things and thinking how to get ahead in the future.
Yeah, I seriously love that. Just, curiosity is the one thing. As we start aging, we forget about that. Look at the kids, they're so curious and they're just so happy about life.
Sponges. They're
And then
sponges.
we
They absorb
just get
everything.
passive and we forget that we need to be curious in order to learn more, because the problem is everybody thinks that they know everything. But anyway, this brings us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You have to answer only in one word or one sentence. Are you ready?
Okay. It'll be a sentence because I like to talk.
Okay. All right. So what is one of the most important thing that you have learned in your life and it always worked for you after learning it?
Just finding trustworthy people to partner up with.
Awesome.
Reliable. Yep.
Awesome. So what is one good book that you have read and you liked it and you like to recommend to my audience?
Man, one year I read 120 books. I did the audiobooks that it scribed at for, it used to be $8 and I was like $12. I forget what it is. So I just listened to a business book every day, just get a foundation. I think that's better than just having one book, and just finding just good business books and just put them in while you're working out or while you're working, if you could concentrate.
Awesome. So in one word, what does life mean to you?
I never had thought about that. I don't know, just like exploration, I guess. I'd be just exploring, seeing what happens.
That's true. I like that. What is your biggest passion?
I would say whenever I do something, I get really into it. I don't do anything like, I want to be the best whatever I do. It's kind of like, it's more just like being a passion. Everything I do, it's like I'm really passionate about it. Whether doing charity events for homeless dogs, whether it's business, whether it's working out, something I get into it, I don't want to do it, or like I just half-ass it basically.
Awesome. So if you could turn back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why? In one sentence.
What I'm trying to do now is travel more.
Travel more. Awesome.
Yeah, which is a lot easier now because now we have all the technology. Back then we didn't have it 20 years ago. We didn't have Zoom meetings.
Awesome. So how can people reach out to you, Jonathan?
Best ways, I got Midwest Park Capital's Mobile Home Park Fund. Mobile Home Wealth Academy is my course teaching people. It's a higher level course. It's like 34 hours. Most courses are like 4 to 8 hours. It's really in depth. It's for serious people that want to go to the next level. Revenue Sun is my consulting and digital marketing CMO service. Credit Investor Podcast or Jonathan Tuttle on social. I have all my links on there as well.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
It was fun. Thank you for having me on.